So Roma Devanbu earned the traditional BFA and MFA a long time ago. She also learned a lot from her students while teaching college in New Jersey and California for many years. She continues her education by looking at art locally and around the world and by listening and reading. Devanbu is a studio resident at Verge Center for the Arts. She is an active member of Access Gallery and has work in public places, including many Northern California hospitals. So, hello, Roma.
Hi. So I guess if anybody has to go to the hospital these days, it's hard to get around to see art, but that would be the upside of having to make a hospital trip.
That's true. That is true. And there have been times that I have been in hospitals and appreciated the art.
To hear that.
So, it does make a difference. I will say that.
Yeah. Hi, Liv. How are you doing?
I'm really good. And actually, so it's fun. This whole process has been interesting because, we've been talking to each other in different ways than we normally would if we just ran into one another, But it's cool. You've been at Verge since we relocated to our building. I mean, you've been there since 2010.
Long time.
Yeah, which is really neat.
That long?
And
yeah.
You got to watch the evolution of everything, and we got to, watch all the different bodies of work that you've been making over the last 10 years. And, something that I've noticed in being around you is that you're always pursuing these different types of projects. So I imagine that a typical day in your studio isn't necessarily typical. You're probably doing something different depending on what it is that you're pursuing, right? Or what does it look like?
Oh, that is so true. I think that I was just talking to somebody, not talking to somebody, I just finished, the second 3 hours of the 6 hours of live streaming. So I've been thinking about these things a little bit this weekend. And I know that there are a lot of artists, and sometimes it's good advice for artists to try to stay kind of narrowly focused. But I think the thing is I have a lot of themes that come up in my artwork again. So like the concepts behind my work repeat a lot, and the things that I get fascinated with repeat a lot, but they do express themselves through different mediums. And especially if I have opportunities to like there's some things you can't do if you don't have space. I love to include installations and interactive things in shows. I've wanted to do that for a long time, but if you don't have a space to do it, then it's difficult to have that kind of an experience, manifest itself. But having spaces like Verge, having in some of those early shows that we had where we got to build things that people could interact with. I'm thinking about that exchange that we had with that Australian Verge.
Yeah.
And then, now being a member of Access, and so there'll be a big space and I can create interactive things there, or even like I did, a big interactive piece at the Penn. So having those opportunities to do things changes what one can conceive of and what one can actually fulfill, have go from your mind into, the physical world. But you're right that the things that I make take a lot of different forms, even though they revolve around the same kind of conceptual themes. And so, yeah, time in my studio can be very different these days. Maybe past 5 or 10 years, I do a lot of cut paper work. So that's kind of a baseline, so there's almost always a lot of painting paper going on, and a lot of cutting paper going on. So I need to have big surfaces where I can do that. But, I do follow my enthusiasms. So I'll get interested. I was just sort of talking about this, but I'll get interested in something like nautical knots or, wire crochet. And I used to sort of tell myself not to follow those rabbit holes, which could be really time consuming and, sort of one could think of them as distracting. But what I do find is that over the years, but even if one of those, fascinations with materials that may take over my consciousness for a week or a month or something, and then it might sort of fade out and I'll think, oh gosh, that was just a distraction. But what I have noticed is that a few years even might go by, and then I'll be creating something, and that fascination with nautical knots or, wicker chairs from the Victorian era will start to come in where I need it to come into the work. That experimentation with that material will start to come in.
Is it something that is process driven or content driven, or what is it when you're showing up? Because we've been talking to all these different artists, and like we just talked to Justin, who is very much about the concepts. He's got these things, these environmental ideas that he's pursuing. And so with you, is it, what is it, that thing that is making you do this versus that?
Okay, I think it's, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's sort of like that. I would also say that my work is sort of concept driven, but whether the metaphor whether the idea emerges out of working with materials, or whether I look for the material to convey or manifest the idea, I'm not even sure if I could say which happens first, because it's all sort of simultaneous. I mean, these things are, I don't mean simultaneous in the sense that it happens at the same, they burst into reality at the same moment. But I think there are words that start to move around in my head, and then as they move around, I start to visualize how they could be real, the concepts could be realized, and then I start to play with the materials, and then the materials want to go this way. So there's a lot of give and take all the way along. And I think I think that even though the things end up taking a wide variety of forms, it might be sculptural, might be drawing, might be fiber sculpture, but I think that I think that in the end, the pieces sort of still look like they're mine, because there's a kind of aesthetic, maybe maybe it's a scaling, or maybe it's the colors I choose, or maybe it's like the again, like I said, the conceptual themes that I keep returning to. So I think the things kind of hold together. I hope they kind of hold together a little bit that way. But I don't know what comes first. I don't. It started too long ago to say.
Well, and it's interesting because what you're describing sounds like you have this sort of just like a running stream, like there's just something that's kind of motivating you all the time, whether you can identify it or not.
Yeah.
Which then leads me to wonder if you find yourself in places where you have, kind of like artist block, where what happens when you find yourself in between projects, or do you not? Do you have ways of just keeping yourself busy until the next thing happens?
So I think that is an excellent question. And if I were to tell you, I mean, the truth is at this point in my life, I have to, weirdly, I think I can say I do not have any, it is like a tap that's like, if it isn't on full stream, it's like irresponsibly dripping. I mean, all the time. And what I mean by that is I might be, trying to do this, but my mind is still thinking about like, oh, you could solve that problem with materials by tying it this way or that way. So, but that said, I do not want to suggest that I'm not a person that has experienced what everybody experiences, or that I won't experience.
I was going to say, because what you're describing seems enviable.
Yeah. So I'm appreciating the moment, because I know artist block very well. And I feel like in my life, there have been, even year-long stretches where I didn't or couldn't make anything. And I've kind of made a bit of a, I'm a little bit fascinated with what helps people to free up and what causes us to block. And I think for myself, I recognized a number of the things that were causing blocks for me. And like one of them was like that critic that sits on everybody's shoulder that would keep telling me, that told me for so many years, that's not worth making. Don't bother with that. No one will take that seriously. And, and that critic still
doesn't matter because you still did it. So who cares?
Well, that critic talked me out of making a lot of things for a long time. And then at a certain point, I realized like, well, I can't shut them up, but I can make them wait outside on the other side of the door or outside the studio or something, or at least not pay too much attention to them. Whereas they say, like, in that story, there are two dogs in your mind, and which dog, survived, the one you fed. So I'm trying not to feed that too much, and that helps. And so, and then also I have to say, although having kids was the most wonderful creative project, still it's extraordinarily time consuming. And so it's also helps a lot that, I have more time now, because things can get on a roll, and having big things like, work obligations or raising children, interrupting that all the time also interferes with flow. And the other thing I would say is that, so one thing is that I do allow myself to explore pretty much anything that comes to mind, and that keeps things flowing. And then I try to use cheap materials that I'm not worried about wasting, for explorations. And then, and having enough time to explore things. And also, I was going to say, I have a lot of projects going on at the same time, which is a problem because they spread out everywhere.
And
I
you
live
need
with
enough
a
room
wonderful
for each one.
husband, right?
Yeah.
So my home is the victim of having many projects happening at the same time.
So we're getting close to the end of our time, unfortunately, because I've been enjoying all of these conversations we've had tonight. And I want to make sure that people know how to contact you and find your work. So you have the directory page on the Verge website, plus you're a Verge artist. So you have your Verge artist page.
Yeah.
So can people contact you through those avenues if they're interested in your work?
I have my website is, which is a Wix site, but they can find me through roma.devanbu.com. And I'm glad that you asked that, because you could contact me through it if you don't have my email address. And the other thing is I am doing a kind of a collaborative project right now, and I am asking people who are interested to send me images of objects from their home, and you can find out more about that on my website.
Cool.
And so this is a chance to get that message out there, because I'm going to incorporate some of those silhouettes into some cut paper pieces I'm doing about collections and things that people keep around their homes. Sort of COVID. I have a number of kind of COVID related art projects that I'm working on right now, and I have a show coming up in January at Axis Gallery. So some of these COVID related things will be available for people to see at that time.
Wow, that's great. And so, yeah, so either on the Sack Open Studios page where the artist directory is, or on the Verge page, they can connect and find out more about, find your website, find out how to, you're on social media, right, Roma?
Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, Facebook.
I mean, I have an Instagram account, but I'm sorry, if you contact me through Instagram, I may never get back to you, because I'm not on there very much at the moment, but I am on Facebook,
Yeah, so they can follow you there too, just to keep up with updates and things like that. Well,
and
cool.
Just saying, I had a great experience with the online.
Oh, good.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I have been dropping in and out of people's live streams all day today. It's been really super neat. So
yeah, I'm so glad they're going to be available to look at. So because, normally we don't get to do that when it's, during our own time, but now I will.
Yeah, it's been like a series of little artist talks, so it's been really cool. Well,
right.
Cool. Thanks so much, Roma. And
so nice to see you.
I know, it's super nice to see you too. That's been one of the nice things about this too. Exactly. And then, yeah, we'll be talking to Cheslin Amato next. I'll see you soon, Roma.